because it's a community which is dedicated to that practice, and so it certainly develops a sense of community. And it's also, I think, in the better debater, develop a sense of openness. Yeah, I think better, it's like all practice. Some people use it for good, and some people use it for maybe not so well. So it's, it all depends on how you use it. But I think in the better people, I think it develops a sense of openness and a sense of inquiry, and I think that's a quality. Now, fit into your overall uh, video. One thing I want to say is that in my book, because I'm an intellectual, I emphasize the intellectual value of the training, and I think it's an extremely important component, and it's well recognized by its quality practitioner. But it's not the only part of the debate. The debate does happen in a religious community which is aiming at certain goals. And so participating in that community is in itself intrinsically valuable. And so I don't want to reduce the value of the training to merely being a training aimed at developing intellectual capacity, because it is in itself a valuable occupation. And so it's not a problem if it takes a long time. And it does take a long time, because you have to first train in the system, which is very constraining for good reasons. And then you can use the system to inquire into a number of topics that are provided by the tradition. And so it takes a really long time, but that's not a problem, because this is in itself a valuable way of life, an extremely meaningful way of life, an extremely fulfilling way of life, because you're part of a very strong community of meaning, which is also a community open to intellectual inquiry. So this is a marvelous combination, which is rare. For example, the academy is not like that. The academy is not a community of meaning. It's a community aimed at developing certain skill and certain program of research, but people have vastly different ethical and moral commitment, and that's fine. That's what secular university should be, but that's not what a monastic university is. So I want to emphasize that I absolutely do not want people to think that the value of debate is merely to inculcate this intellectual qualities, sorry, however important they are. And we see nowadays that having one's head screwed in the right way on one's shoulder is not an insignificant, it's not an insignificant quality. So this is really important to keep in mind. A lot of fun interaction when I was a graduate student taking philosophy course, because I was well trained as a philosopher, and I could really engage with the teacher. And I remember, it's in my book, an episode in which the teacher was screaming at me and the other students were shocked. And the teacher said, no, George is fully trained. He can take it. There is no problem. And that's why I think the context is extremely important, because what makes a debate fun is this, and meaningful is this context in which everybody knows that they are in a safe environment in which they are there to explore ideas. At least that's what all the teachers tell you. You know, not everybody is, it's not 100%, but it's pretty good. I mean, you know, people scream at each other, call each other all kind of names. Part of the fun, it's enormously engaging activity, but that's all because everybody share a kind of purpose in investment in the community. And I think that's difficult to reproduce, and that's not a function of the technique itself, the format. That's a function of the context in which it takes place. Yeah, but I don't think you need that particular format to do that. I mean, I have had that experience in universities, you know, where you engage in, and the obstacle in a university to this kind of fun exchange is that people are very worried about the reputation, the standing, and whether they are going to be hired, and so on. And so I think the context really makes a huge difference. But you know, I have had a lot of fun interaction when I was a graduate student taking philosophy course, because I was well trained as a philosopher and I could really engage with the teacher. And I remember, it's in my book, an episode in which the teacher was screaming at me and the other students were shocked. And the teacher said, no, George is fully trained. He can take it. There is no problem. And that's why I think the context is extremely important, because what makes a debate fun is this, and meaningful is this context in which everybody knows that they are in a safe environment in which they are there to explore ideas. At least that's what all the teachers tell you. You know, not everybody is, it's not 100%, but it's pretty good. I mean, you know, people scream at each other, call each other all kind of names. Part of the fun, it's enormously engaging activity, but that's all because everybody share a kind of purpose in investment in the community. And I think that's difficult to reproduce, and that's not a function of the technique itself, the format. That's a function of the context in which it takes place.
Also, in debate, we're forced to confront our delusions. You know, this is ultimately, as I said, the purpose of debate is not just to gain information or to be able to explain philosophical points, but to understand our own minds and our own delusions. And in debate, we have to confront that, because we have to be able to sit in front of people who are telling us we're wrong. And this is very hard. For a lot of us, we don't like that. It's actually considered rude if somebody tells you flat out you're wrong. And not just say that word, but make very clear, okay, you said this, and then you said this. These contradict each other. Or what you said is contrary to what we know to be true. Or do you not accept that to be true? And we all accept, for example, that the speed of light is this particular constant. And what you said just contradicts that. Do you not accept that? So then, with anything like that, we have certain parameters that we accept together. And we can point out to somebody that what you're saying either contradicts what you've said before, or it contradicts what we consider, what we collectively consider to be the truth. Now, it may be that this person has a different opinion, but then they have to be able to defend that. They might say, well, actually, I disagree that that's the speed of light. It's something else. But you have to be able to make a pretty good argument if you want to be able to go against, you know, a lot of evidence, a lot of a lot of very intelligent people who accept that for good reason. So sometimes it may be that somebody has a brilliant new idea, but they have to be able to defend that. They have to be able to explain it, not just to come up with the idea, but to coherently explain how it works and defend it against all kinds of criticism. So this is something we practice in debate every day, and we get used to people telling us we're wrong, which is very good, because then we recognize what thoughts or what ideas we have that are wrong, and we can start to let go of those. Whereas if nobody ever tells us we are wrong, or points out to us our internal contradiction, we can have a wrong idea for years and years and years. And all of us have a lot of wrong ideas. So we have to be able to train in this. Sometimes in the debate we get very emotional. You'll see debaters and they seem to be getting very worked up. This is considered a very good thing, because if we get worked up and we get emotional, then we actually remember it much better. If I get very upset when somebody tells me I'm wrong, I'll probably remember tomorrow or even next year what they said, what was the contradiction. And of course, just getting worked up allows us to, we get an adrenaline rush. This is why when people play sports again, they say getting in the zone. Your mind gets into a state where you can really focus. And this is what we're trying to do in debate. It's not just about sitting back comfortably, quietly, and having a quiet discussion. You don't get so intensely focused and be able to make very clear distinctions. This is what we're training in. And sometimes we have the sort of the cliche, we might say, in the West of a nutty professor, or the professor who, he gives this very philosophical presentation in class, but when you go back to his room, everything's a mess and he can't run his own life. I mean, I don't know if this is true, but this is sort of a bit of a stereotype we might have about professors. But this is possible that this could happen if somebody doesn't ever have to confront these things. If it's just a matter of studying in your room all the time and not being in a situation where people are directly, pointedly asking you questions with a lot of pressure. So probably this obviously does happen within the scientific community. We see people have to defend, they write to, even if it's just in writing, they submit something, it has to have peer review, or somebody defends their thesis, in a dissertation, they have to be able to defend it in front of a committee. So these are very skillful methods for forcing people to really confront their thinking. So this is, something, but within debate, that's very much an important part of it. That somebody who comes through this program cannot just hide in their room and be able to read a lot of things and understand them in their head, but not defend them in public. It's a community of scholars.
As you're debating, yes, it's like there's so many levels happening at the same time, and I'm impressed. I was able to see it in my cell framework. But as you're saying, the theory of mind now in the U domain, which is where a lot of the theory of mind is happening, because this is where I take the relationship I have with myself and I bring it with you, and how do we interact in this place is fantastic. And then at a higher level, again, in the us domain, which, when you go into critical thinking, you understand interdependence, you understand and you develop your systemic thinking also, a form of systemic intelligence. And then the actions or, the choices you make there, again, is a higher level. It's not just me and you. I'm into something much bigger. And it's the system around us, the world around us. And you could see like the Tibetan debaters at a high level would throw in debating any kind of problem and work and chew and then come up with, okay, so according to this, we should do that. Or so debating it's a high level thought process. But this is also what gives us a lot of trouble, because we're making decisions for, while I'm a politician in place and I'm going to last 5 minutes. But if our intention is to be sustainable and grow ecosystems that we can nurture, that will take a long, long time. Intention is really critical here. So to bring this in the thought process, in the debating, that would be amazing. Yeah. So, if you look at this theoretical framework, what's holding the three domains of competencies together is the healthy relationship. But when we practice this, hold on, just go down to page 2. Okay. So this is the practice, and sorry, this is meant for schools. But if we're doing this with our debating, the main framework is the same. In the center of these three domains, how we develop these competencies is through emotional literacy, what we call feelings and needs. So feelings and needs are extremely important. They will train all these competencies. So if we say apply debating mostly to the us domain, so I can appreciate interdependence, make responsible decision through this process of debating. While I'm there, if I'm a dysregulated person with little self-awareness, this is going to be a difficult process. So the us domain is the culmination of all these competencies, and they start with the first one, self-awareness, self-regulation, and they build on each other. They're interconnected. It's very hard to be someone who makes responsible ethical decisions if I don't understand the you domain. I'm not alone, there's others. I have to really develop a sense of empathy and compassion. I have a sense of social awareness, and I have good relationship skills. And then I can go into my us domain, which is a combination of all these competencies. For me, if you're asking me, debating, yes, you will need a lot of emotional regulation and a lot of self-awareness, awareness of others in order to be a good debater. So these are all important skills that can apply to nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication, this connection of feelings and needs, this is what we use to train all these competencies in all three domains. So it's actually key. There are no relationships without emotions, and emotions are part of our relationships. And out of which, if we're debating on things, well, this will be part of the equation. So we need to be, it's helping us become a black belt, in social and emotional skills.
Right.
So it's very interesting. Yeah. And relationship skills. Yeah. Because you could see some like being at each other's almost like and then after that, let's go out and have a tukpa together or whatever. So it's in a monastic setting, it's wonderful to observe all these competencies at play.
Yeah.
Is there somebody who debates, who becomes angry and remains angry afterwards, or for losing an argument, or so all of these also could, it could help you understand what you need to practice and what's happening for you in there. So emotions, relationships are really part of the debating, but for me, it's quite interesting to see what's going on. And I'm sure that when you achieve a very high level, when you're doing your exam and you're in front of the whole, monasteries, and you're debating in front of everyone, you need a very high level of self-awareness and regulation, to keep your thoughts very sharp. So debating helps probably achieve that at the same time.
Right.
Yeah. Now, if I think if you work with young debaters, emotion regulation and stuff, if things happen, it's a good, sorry, I'm gonna say it in French, it's a piste, if you get really dysregulated while debating, what's going on for you, and how can you achieve this a calmer state of mind to remain sharper while you debate, because you need to be very sharp. Right. So it's a fun thing.
Two advantages happening. One is it's really absorbed in your mind the meaning of topic, and also that lasts long in your memory. Nowadays, one of the big problem in the Western, the student is they have a really kind of a problem for the memory because
Mm.
they are not memorizing, and then sometimes some topics need to be keep last long in your mind. So in when we are debating, it's very strongly involved to the connection person to depender and the offense, and then that makes some sort of very kind of deeply absorbed in your mind that will last long. So that's kind of beneficial, and also very deeply absorb the topic in the real to the your mind that stick for last long. So that sort of thing is and also they have a lot of fun part, sort of people doing playing each other. So that's a lot of fun part too, which is kind of maybe beneficial for them, sort of like a happy time or break time, something like that. So I think will be beneficial. One you remind me to one is it's a very social skill,
It's a
you
social
know
skill. Mm.
social skill. It's a sometimes nowadays lots of people have a little problem for the social skill. I was completely shocked when I was at the colleges. They have some sort of social class, that student class that basically they are teaching to the how to the communicate. That's
I
not the
see.
highly just normal communicate. Some
Right.
some student some kids they grow up with a very isolate,
Mm.
that staying alone at the room, and they just go to school and back in the room, and that not much involved to the regular, I mean at the outside of class, they don't involve to the student, and then they has to taught to the the how to skill regular. I was completely shocked. I never thought of the, even though monks, the people supposed to monks who kind of isolated, but
Right.
it's the monks, who are debating class. It's a they're very involved to the social kind of
Yeah.
that's I think it's a goal. Maybe one last thing is look at some of the the videos that monks how to playing. It's not only the mentally or verbally, but also physically. You get lots of enjoyment and some sort of the kung fu or that kind of thing is. And then also when you're debating that one to one or sometimes big group, all these things, it's just really fun stuff. So if you're really into it,
So it's
so
that
I hope
social.
yeah, I hope some will get lots of enjoyment too.
It could be, well, I'm not sure I would advocate. I mean, it could be adapted to a much more toned down version. And because it could be disrupted for the classrooms next to this classroom. However, it makes it a lot more fun to be shouting and so forth. And the personal development that takes place by raucously shouting and it's just plain fun,
Mm.
and it brings some fun into it that otherwise wouldn't be there. And it's not that you have to do this all the time, and the part of it also is to be very coy and lower your voice and make the other person lean into to to listen. When you were speaking, I've wondered, in England there's